I'm just actually on the music streaming side of things with Spotify, Deezer, and other apps like that. What role will that play for the actual radio host themselves when music is so easily accessible from anywhere around the world? Does that mean the host is going to have an even bigger part to play and the personality associated with that?
I think it's important to make the distinction, in terms of streaming service, personalised radio. Personalised radio is not radio. Personalised radio is a music catalogue. And whether you're sitting forward or leaning back in terms of picking your music selection, that's what it is. If you look at our example in terms of Australian Radio Network, we're launching iHeartRadio into this market in the coming weeks. And the insight that we've gained from there is that, and it was launched in the States about 2 years ago, it's growing faster than Pandora. It's the second highest digital platform growth in the world behind Instagram. So I mean, there's a myriad of huge numbers. But the interesting thing is that if you analyse the usage of it, that despite having 1,800 stations on the one platform plus a customised radio on the same platform, they've doubled their online listening to their current stations in the space of 18 months. So it's gone from something like 50 million to 104 million hours of consumed. That the 1,700 stations to choose from, people are still choosing the local one or two stations that's closest to them geographically. And that morning time, drive time during the day is still the time when people want to interact with radio. Radio is, it's more than music. It's actually the strength of the local talent is extremely powerful. The news, the weather, the sport, the entertainment, what's going on, that's dynamic. Personalised radio is not dynamic. So, in terms of our strategy launching iHeartRadio, it will be extremely complementary. It'll be core to our actual radio offering. And we see it just bolting on to our broadcast as opposed to sitting out here and being another unit. Because trying to monetize this other unit out here is extremely difficult. And my belief is that nobody's cracked it yet, whether it's Pandora, Spotify, nobody has actually answered that solution around monetizing this. Because I think it was Venture Consulting issued something the other day which showed that, while subscription-based revenue is growing enormously compared to sort of mobile advertising, that model is flawed in that the margin is so tight by the time you pay the music labels, by the time you pay royalties, that to have some person using and spending $10 or $15 a month and them using it more and more and more, it's actually diminishing returns that goes on. So nobody has actually realized the monetization of this personalized service, where I think it's of great benefit to radio, whether it's audio, whether it's iHeart, or whether it's whatever else anybody else is launching, is actually if you bolt it onto your core offering. If you can go to an advertiser and say, we're building not just an FM audience, but we're building other audiences who want to engage at different times, at off-peak times, and the data analytics around that, that's a much more powerful message. Plus, we also have our FM and our AM assets to market the platform. So it's definitely not the end of radio. It's actually quite complementary and will bring new audiences into the market, in my view.
Broadcasters have a great opportunity to launch next generation radio products because we have audiences and we have, in some cases, mobile adaptations of what we do, streaming applications with millions of downloads in aggregate. So we have the voice and we have the big hammer to drive the nail and to build customers to new products. We've just got to be able to develop the products. Now, streaming is an expensive space. And I think most of the big companies, I mean, a couple of them in the States, have been valued off their top line, not their bottom line, because people see the lifetime value of a customer base, the size of a Pandora, and so on. So that's the business that radio will become implied in. And, that's next generation ad products, which give you the ability to target, and the data that comes with it will be a requirement. So, back to my point about just saying you've got a big audience, it probably isn't enough. So I think you will find, whether it's through iHeartRadio or any other of the platforms that radio stations start to deliver, if we're quick and we're good enough, we can be very much at the forefront of these things rather than sitting back and seeing them as threats.
What are the early lessons you're seeing through your own partnership?
With audio, that it's a very competitive space. So we were one of the first to launch in Australia, but there are now 7 or 8 different places. I think our biggest lesson over the year that we've had with audio is how valuable we are to that partnership because of the audience that we have and because of the ability for us to integrate our core offering with a music sort of platform, for streaming. A good example of that, on Friday night I get a tweet from the guy that's on air across the Nova network saying, kicking back on the weekend looking for something to do, check out this new music. And it was from Smallsy, and there was a link to RDO and a playlist of emerging stuff that probably is about a month or 2 months away from getting heard on the radio, but the ability for us to communicate with our audience about what's next, and obviously the ability to share in the revenue and ultimately the profit of RDO in the process. So it's an interesting space, and I think the leverage that we've got through the audiences that we do have is probably one of the most powerful assets. And I think RDO are now trying to replicate this partnership in other territories internationally, because I think they've learnt of the power of the combination of broadcast and streaming.
And the challenge of radio, or challenge for radio, obviously in the rise of digital, that's one example. Another one is just the fact that it's very hard to be just news radio anymore when your audience has probably already read the news on a website somewhere. Russell and then Adam, has it actually changed the way that you can do talk radio now?
I think news talk radio is absolutely bulletproof. I'd hate to be in music. I think that's really tough. News talk is expensive. It only works if you've got high profile, opinionated, all of that, and all the risks associated. But I mean, by definition, it's got a lifespan of the news, that particular news cycle. The news might be delivered by somebody with a mobile phone sitting next to a traffic accident. But once it's done, it's done. And we're actually quicker. We're quicker. We can deliver news quicker than any other medium. Online is too slow. We've beaten it. And when I first got involved at Macquarie 3-4 years ago, I mean, they'd actually gone overboard in developing applications, all of this stuff, trying to utilise the customers that they had. And my first sort of reaction to what they were doing, and spending a lot of money, wasting a lot of money, was they'd actually given up to some extent on what was the core business, like old-fashioned AM radio. Geez, we better do something else. We better get into this digital thing. They were spending a fortune. It was going nowhere. Who wants to, even today, really, given the menu that's available to people in terms of you walk into your office in the morning and you turn your computer on and you want to catch up with the news. I mean, are you really, from everything available, are you really going to go, as good as it might be, to 2GB news? It's probably number 10, number 20, number 30. I mean, it's crazy. Concentrate on what we have, and that's what we've done. Everyone was confused as to where they worked. The poor old reps had to go and sell digital. They couldn't spell digital.
Now, Adam, I'm suddenly understanding that perhaps your motivation for moving across from Oz Stereo to Fairfax was in fact because you could see that music radio was dying and you wanted to head for talk. Was that your motivation?
I spent 12 years in the music industry. I'm a passionate music fan, so I agree with what Cathy and Ciaran said. It's a different form of consumption of music, but the relationship between radio host, radio station and audience is paramount. And you build that with music, yep, but you build that around primarily a lot more, and that is the intrinsic nature of the conversation, the news, the traffic, the weather, etc. So I think we've built that audience scale over time. And in terms of digital, I just see that as an enhancement opportunity to what we do. In the news talk environment, we lead the news. I'll give you an example from Sydney and Melbourne. From Sydney, first week of Paul Murray's show, your MC throughout these proceedings.
And thank you very much for giving me
for the line. A pleasure. And Paul's, his first week from the newsroom of the Sydney Morning Herald had the Prime Minister come in, which was filmed in his studio. So we were broadcasting as a radio station, live online TV, to Twitter, to Facebook, to our website. So it's an amplification opportunity for what we do in radio. In Neil Mitchell's case in Melbourne, his morning show, he's created Neil's picture page, which is people on the street see something, they get that picture and they send it in, or they video it and send it in, and it is the news. And so frequently we see that picked up online by news publications and in TV that night. So I would argue it's an amplification opportunity for both music and for talk.
Okay, let's...
And just back on that, because I think it's back to what we said earlier on about understanding our audiences and their behaviour. I mean, there's a huge portion of audience that couldn't give a flying rat's what's happening in the world about what's going on in talk, and will never listen to talk radio. Equally, from a talk radio perspective, won't listen to music. But and that's always going to be, that always has been the case and always will be the case. But if each network can understand and really demonstrate to advertisers that the audience they have, the influences of the purchasing decision, then that will drive additional revenue coming into the industry. So whether is it talk for music, I don't think that's the argument, because there's a huge population on both sides that will never listen to talk radio or never listen to music radio.
So